Happy Friday. Happy Friday. Today's October 23rd. We're a week away from Halloween, which we can't celebrate, but I hope everyone's doing really well. I'm excited. I'm always excited on Fridays. I have the most energy on Fridays. But thank you for tuning in. Last episode, we had Itzel and Eduardo. We talked about being Latinx at a public white institution. It was awesome. Great stuff. I think we can continue the conversation today with a different topic this time, though. The topic is first generation women in college. I think this is a very important topic. I think growing up for me, I had my own struggles as a first generation student, and it was very challenging. However, though, it was a first generation male student. So let's go ahead and get a perspective from two speakers of today. We have Thi and Cecilia. They're going to talk a little bit of their experience as a first generation women in college. So let me go ahead and invite Thi to join me right now. Let's see. Sending it. Just sent it. Oh, it's connecting. Okay. Hey,
Hi, how's it going?
can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. I'm always used to Zoom, and Zoom, hey, can you hear me? I don't know. It's not
Yeah,
connected. Seems
me
like
too.
Instagram's a little ahead with Zoom because, it connected really fast.
Yeah. Thank you again for inviting me, Benjamín. This is the first time I've done this, so I didn't even know how to get on until you showed me.
No, well, thank you for supporting me with this. I think it's an important topic that, again, as a first generation student, as a male first generation student, I have my own experiences, and there's other conversations with that. But I think it's important to highlight first generation women in college and, like, yeah, just your experience and a little bit about that. So, I mean, can you tell us a little bit about you? Like, um, where do you work? Where you from? Where'd you go to college? What was your major?
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in San Jose, right in like the Willow Glen area, downtown San Jose. My parents both immigrated from Vietnam after the Vietnam War, and I just grew up here. I've been here since I was like a baby, and then I went to UC Berkeley for my undergrad. I did mass communications, political science, and then I minored in philosophy. And then after college, I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And that led me to the Peace Corps. So I was actually in Belize for 2 years, where I worked in youth development and taught dance. And after that, I decided to do grad school in Newport, Rhode Island, because I've never been on that side of the country for a long period of time. And I thought grad school for 2 years would be great to have that experience. And then when I was there, I decided to go into education and youth development. And so that led me to become an AmeriCorps volunteer at an organization in the Chicagoland area. I was there for a few years. And then when I hit 30, I was like, it's time to go home. And so back to the Bay, I moved. I worked for a nonprofit after that that helped blood cancer patients find bone marrow matches. So like leukemia, lymphoma. And then I was like, you know what? What is it that is like my true calling? What is it that I'm meant to be doing? And through that job, I've really had the chance to like be in different sectors of nonprofits and business and realize that I just really love being around young people. And so I had been following KIP for a few years. And when a position became available that was non-instructional, I like applied and here I am at KIP, the start of my 7th year as the
Hey,
director of school operations.
nice. Yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah.
same organization, right? Different teams. You're in a school site. I'm more of like in the regional office slash working with college students. But it's intense. You've been all over. I didn't know none of this. Like, obviously, like there, but like we've never really had a like an actual conversation like this. This is super cool, super awesome. Well, I mean, like, okay, so you went to UC Berkeley. Your parents
Mhm.
from Vietnam. How was your experience growing up and being first generation student, navigating the school system? Obviously, your parents didn't know this school system here in the United States. Like, how was that for you? Was it challenging at times? Was there a language barrier? Sorry.
Yeah, I really didn't know anything about college when I applied. I remember I didn't even understand the concept of college. And when I was in elementary school, we had like 2 grades together. So third and fourth grade was together. And I remember like my friend being in fourth grade, she's older, and I was like, so are you gonna go to college? She's like, yeah. I was like, well, me too. And so that was how like the idea of college got in my mind.
Mhm.
And I just always knew that I was going, but I didn't understand the difference between UC systems and CSUs and even private colleges and all of that. I really just applied to the schools that like I heard around my high school. And I'm also the only child, so my parents hadn't done this with anyone else before. And it was really just name recognition. I was like, oh, I've heard of that school. I'll check the box. So yeah, not very much knowledge at all.
Okay, okay. And like, so selecting schools, you said it was just more of like, okay, maybe what other folks potentially were applying to, and you decided to Berkeley. And like, did you live on the dorms? Did you commute over there? Because I mean, it is kind of like a 30-minute drive here and there with dog traffic, but you know how it is.
For me in San Jose, it's like an hour and a half, hour and 11 minutes. No, I did stay at the dorms starting the first year, and that was really fun. I got to meet lots of cool people.
And how were your parents about it? Like, were they okay with you living in the dorms? Like, yeah, in that experience, because like being the only child, like I don't know, like I'm not the only child, so I'm just curious to know your experience in that part.
Yeah, I think they were just really excited for me to like get accepted into the school. Actually, once I got accepted, they kind to the school, they kind of like backed off a little bit because before that, they're just like, "You're great." They were really on top of me for so many things, and I think that just kind of like eased their mind a little bit. The dorm thing, that part, I think they were okay with. I think the struggle for me during college and like my education was like what career path I was going to choose. So that was like the point of tension.
And did you have like on campus like anyone to lean on for these type of potential conversations or like mentoring for a major career, like what to do? As a first generation, like I said, like first generation student for myself, like there was a lot of like guessing and like you said earlier, which connected really well with me of like, oh, if that person potentially is doing it, oh, like might as well do it as well, right? So like I had a couple friends who would pick like class schedules ahead of me because they were on top of their things. So I was just kind of like, okay, I'll do what you're doing, and like, but sometimes that wasn't the best. Obviously, the best option. It was possibly best to go to a counselor, you know. But for you, like, how did you find navigating your way around like such a prestigious institution like Berkeley that could have like imposter syndrome for, situations there for first generation students?
Yeah, we definitely had counselors at our school, but I think my first experience with the counselor I had, that person wasn't very knowledgeable. And even like study abroad, I had financial aid, and the first time I walked into the study abroad office, they're like, "Oh, you can't study abroad. You have financial aid." And years later, I found out other people in my circumstance like did study abroad. So I think like my recommendation to someone would be like, if you go the first time and you're just like, I'm not really sure if this is right, like go back, find somebody else. It's kind of like calling to customer service at T-Mobile or something like that or whatever, right? Like you call, every person is different and you get different information. So I think like that's something that I learned over the years was just like, hey, if you go in the first time, it doesn't sound quite right, it's not the right person, like go back again, really try to get that information.
That,
Um,
that's a very good advice. Like again,
yeah.
me and like my students experience sometimes that I don't know if it's a culture thing. Like for me, like I was always shy or uncomfortable asking an adult, and maybe even today, like whenever we might go somewhere, and like like this is wrong, and I might ask Isabel, hey, like just go ask. Like I don't want to ask. I feel kind of
Yeah.
embarrassed, and so it's. I guess I still have it at times, and it could be potentially like something that you maybe grew with. I don't know, but if I was in your position, for sure I would struggled. I would have been like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to ask for help. I'm just gonna go to my dorm after class. And but did you like the major again? Like how did you find your place on campus? How did you find that?
Yeah.
Join any student organizations? Yeah, like when did that happen? Like all that transition for you to like no, okay, this is what I'm majoring in.
It was really, it started off as a process of elimination because I knew I wasn't good in math, and I didn't enjoy math either, or science or engineering. And so what was left for me at that time was like communications and the liberal arts.
Mm.
And it started off as like, oh, this is what's left. But as I was going through those classes, I really enjoyed them. And I started with one major, mass comm, and then through that I learned about political science. Like, what is this? And that's how I decided to double major. And then it kept going on from there. Um, like going back to what we briefly touched upon before, the hardest part was really just like having conflicting ideas with my family of like what my life would look like and what my career choice would be. So I think like typically, right, like, oh, you're Asian, you choose science and engineering or like become a doctor. I think for my mom, like, oh, you're gonna be a pharmacist or not necessarily just race either, but also like, hey, you're in the Silicon Valley, you need to go into tech. And that was just not like an area that lit me up and I was excited about. Even when I was in high school, like my uncle would call me and just say, hey, this is what you need to do. This is how you're going to make a living. You can't do anything else. I will pay for your tutors. And I was just like, I really like the thought of it just made me not happy. And so I pursued like what I felt was right for me. And even with the Peace Corps, right? My mom's like, I need you here. Like, why would you go to another country to help other people when I need you here, right? And so I think like that was really hard over the 4 years and after, because I think at the end of the day, what your parents want for you is just for you to be happy and be able to take care of yourself and like live a good life. And I think like, and it was scary for me too, but like just following your own intuition and your heart and your soul, I think now it worked out, and I think like they're happy for me. And I see that with my students that I worked with in Chicago. Like their parents is like, be a doctor, and they're like, oh, I'm into business. And now he's like, one of my students is working in Dubai as a businessman, and he's like, come visit me sometime, T, you know? So I think the lessons that I've learned in college and beyond is like whatever you choose, there's always going to be people who agree with you and people who disagree with you, any decision you make. So just like do what feels right for you.
That's cool. I like it. I like it. I connect a lot, especially as with the major piece. The when I was in community college, my mom, my parents would always mention this one family member who we have, who's kind of like not like close, but
Yeah.
he went to college and all that good stuff, and he became an electrical engineer, and like they would always talk to me about this guy, like, oh yeah, you gotta like be like him, and like he's doing this. I mean, no shame to him if he's watching this, like love, but it was just so I'm like I don't want to be like him because I am not him, but I would just stay quiet again. I would just stay quiet, stay quiet. I don't want to argue. So they wanted me to be an engineer, and I'm like, okay, great. I like math. Let's try it out. So then they placed me in like all these computer classes and math, etc. And I was just not happy again, like being the first, not knowing. It's just like you said, like just what do I do? And it wasn't until like later on, right? Like I was able to find that out. I don't have, there's no magic way of finding out. Like people can tell you everything. You can watch so many videos, take a bunch of classes, but when it happens, it happens. And you just know. Like it's weird to explain. Like you just know. It's like, how do you fall in love? I don't know. You just know. But I think what I'm getting from you, and I agree with you, is just basically just put yourself out there and like trust the process. Like if you, the more and more you connect with people, the more you try different things and join different potential organizations, opportunities on campus, you'll slowly be like, okay, I don't like that. Maybe this. Let's try that, etc. So I like that.
Yeah. And I think something to add on to that too is just like not being afraid to change course. So even if you start like a certain major, like your sophomore year, like, oh, I've done 2 years in this, like, oh, it's too late. It's like, it's not too late. Like you have a lifetime and you know, just and even if you pursued what you originally thought, like it might not go out to plan, right? Like how you plan it to be. So just like I think check in with yourself period like often and just see like, hey, does this feel right? Does this feel right? Does this feel right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I know we're getting close to time. I do want to respect your time as well. I always say this in every video, but I do want to respect your time. And thank you so much for joining me and for sharing a little bit about your story. I think it's very powerful for folks, for my students, for anybody to hear these potential something that might connect with them. And yeah, so thank you so much. Really appreciate
Thank you so much too. It was so lovely to like chat with you.
it. And I'm curious to know a little bit, I mean, some other day about that philosophy minor. I'm curious to know, like, why? What how did that
For
happen?
sure.
Because I'm right now doing some readings on philosophy from Mexico. So I'm like, what how do you, this like, it's another, that's a whole different conversation. But again, thank you so much.
Okay. Sounds good.
Take care.
We'll connect later. Bye.
Bye. All right. Well, thank you, T, so much for joining. And now I'm going to invite Cecilia. So let me go ahead and find her. Ah, here she is. All right. Great conversation. She's awesome. Hey,
Hi,
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good, good as well. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Yeah, that's what I've been telling my students all day. Like, so excited for the weekend, even if there's nothing to do, right?
Do you work with college students or high school students?
I'm working with college students right
Okay.
now. Yeah, with undergrad students.
Okay. Well, I mean, well, since we're doing introductions, like, can you, like, can you tell us, like, where you're from, where do you
Yeah.
work, where do you go to college, and what was your major?
Yeah,
All that.
so my name is Cecilia. I use she, her, ella pronouns. I am originally from Salina, so shout out to the 831, right? I went to undergrad at UC Berkeley as well, so to Cal, and I majored in public health, minor in education. After that, I did college advising in San Jose, and I loved doing that work. And after that, I actually was also an advisor at my alma mater high school at Everett Alvarez. And then, from working with students, I realized that it was not enough like getting them to college because I was helping with college applications like FAFSA, Dream Act applications, and all of that like fun stuff and working with parents. But I did like realize like, okay, it's not enough because students were getting to college, but then they were really struggling there in terms of like finding resources and just having imposter syndrome and not knowing who to go to. And so I realized that I really wanted to also work in higher ed to support those students. And I went to Harvard Graduate School of Education in Boston. So like flew across the country basically for the first time. And there I got my master's in higher ed. And right now I'm currently working at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo for a program called Cal Poly Scholars. So it's a scholarship program that, supports and retains high achieving students, which everyone's a high achieving student, I say, but students that come from low income backgrounds. So that's what I've been doing currently.
That's so cool. Hey, that's so cool. Well, yes, shout out to the 831. It's that's where I'm from as well. I didn't know you were an Eagle though. Well, that's another.
Oh, oh.
But yeah, okay. So I agree with you. I've done what's called match work, no, when you help students apply to college or whatnot. It's fun. Like I said, I enjoy it. I think it's good work. But I'm on the same boat as you, higher ed. My passion is working with college students. I think the most impact I got, I guess I can say because of me, the most impact that I got in was when I was in college. Like I got to college, community college. I got there. Okay, great. But then how do you manage that, right? As a first, again, with the topic of today, first generation student, how do you like there were so many things even to today when I reflect on it that I think, and I tell my students, I'm like, damn, like I wish I knew all these things. Like I could have studied abroad. I could have like done all these things. I didn't even know what EOP was. Like I clearly
Right.
qualified for EOP, but I never applied. I had no idea, nothing, right? So it's just there's so much work to be done at 4 years, even in community college, at the high school, and so many, right? So there's people for each piece, right? But for me,
Yeah.
I'm in the same lane as you, so that's super awesome. And all right, so first generation women in college. How was like? Are you the oldest in your family? Do you have siblings? What does that look like in your fam? And when you went to college, what was that process for you? At,
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm actually in the middle. So I have two older brothers. And then I have a younger sister. So my oldest brother, he went to Cal Poly, where I currently work. And he's a little bit older than me, about 10 years older. And then my other brother, who's also older than me, he went to community college and, you know, kind of stayed there for, I don't know how many years, maybe like 6 years or something like that. And eventually transferred. But when it came to me, I was the first daughter to go to any college, and I really wanted to leave Salinas. So I was like the type of person that was like, oh, Salinas is too small. There's nothing to do here. It's just all fields, right? And I wanted something that was completely different. And so like originally I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to LA or like go out of state. Like I applied to, you know, like schools like on the East Coast in the Midwest. I was just trying to get away. Okay. I just was like, I need freedom. And so it was difficult in terms of like I had to do a lot of things on my own. Like not only am I like first gen, but my parents only speak Spanish, and so like doing the FAFSA was like so hard because I'm over here trying to translate, and then my dad is like not understanding, and just like he's like, what do you need my taxes for? And you know, the whole process of like just even applying was difficult, and I felt like there's not a lot of like support or resources at my high school. So like a lot of that was like on my own. But when it came to like getting into colleges, like my parents were not very understanding of like me wanting to leave. And even though like my oldest brother had left, he was already back in Salinas working in ag. So that was like, you know, Salinas is all about ag. And so they wanted the exact same thing for me. They wanted me to follow the same path. They're like, why don't you go to Cal Poly and do ag? It's like either that or going to Hartnell, the local community college. And you know, they even tried to bribe me. They're like, we'll buy you a car if you stay in Salinas, you know, because, you know, it wasn't like very common for like Latina women to like leave their homes unless they're getting married. And for me to be like going to like school, they were like, oh, but there's a school in Salinas. Why would you go all the way to like LA or Berkeley when there's like a perfectly good school, like a community college in Salinas? Yeah, when I ended up getting into Berkeley, they were like, they didn't even know what that school was, where it was. But I ended up getting a scholarship to go there. And so like that kind of helped things that, you know, they weren't going to have to like pay anything for me to go. The scholarship program that I was part of was really good because not only did they like bus me to the university to stay with the current student, but then they also bused my parents, which was like really nice. They gave them a tour in Spanish. They like, and the tour was but someone that was from Salinas, so that really helped. And then gave them like a presentation, and they said like, oh, she's in our hands, so like you don't have to worry about that. So that was like really awesome for my parents to hear that it was like you have to bring in the family into this decision. And so yeah, I did struggle a lot to convince my parents to like let me go to, you know, leave home. But I'm really glad that I was able to do that because I have a younger sister, and so then it was a lot easier for her to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a lot of things. Okay, so you mentioned ag. What's ag?
Yeah, so Salinas is like a predominantly ag community. My parents actually, like growing up, they like worked in the field. So my mom worked in the strawberry fields, and then my dad worked in everything from like strawberries to lettuce, and like would follow the crops. And so like our community, like, you know, a lot of people have like parents that work in the field or have family members that work in the fields. And my brother actually studied like ag business so that he could be like on the business side of ag rather than like working in the fields. But you know, Salinas is like very well known as like the salad bowl of the world.
Yes, we are. You mean agriculture, right? When you mean ag, you mean agriculture? Yes. No, I mean, I know what it is, so I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Potentially might not know. Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting for you to say, like, you had two older siblings who went to college, one who left Salinas. But then when you wanted to go, all of a sudden there's like, wait, hold up. Why you want to leave? Espérame. And I mean, I think you touched on a little bit on it, but the gender, do you think it's because of the gender, the cultural gender pressures? again, like for me, like as a first generation male student, I didn't really have those struggles. But what I think about like my students, some coworkers, some people that I know who are women, right, Latinx women, they have. I've heard the car story. I've heard that, no, well, why are you gonna go to college? Just one here, like 30 minutes away, etc. Did they ever throw in Monterey Bay for you to attend? Like, I'm sure they, if they did or not, that's another comment, right? Go to this local CSU, etc. So I'm really interested to know, like, what was those conversations like? And then once you were at Berkeley, how was your way navigating through Berkeley, being first gen, a Latina, and far away from home? Did you feel homesick? Did you feel like at some point, hey, you know what? I think my parents are right. I need to go back.
Yeah, I think intersectionality is really important, right? Like, I'm a Latina, I'm first gen, low income background, like all of these different things, like I think had a huge influence on me and in my educational journey. And yeah, for my parents, it's like not only because I'm like the oldest daughter, I had to do like a lot of the housework within my home, but also like, you know, I had to do a lot of things for my brothers as well because they're men and they didn't have to take on some of those responsibilities. And in addition to that, I'm like also my family's advocate. I do like a lot of the translating, you know, like interpreting certain bills, a lot of things that like I know that first gen and like you know, daughters, sons of immigrants have to do as well. And I think they were just like scared of like letting me go. Once I got to Berkeley, you know, because obviously I was very excited to leave Salinas and have this college experience. But once I got there, I did have like intense like culture shock, and just like not seeing people that look like me, nothing like Salinas at all. So it was just very, very different. And like, yes, the academics were very hard, but I really struggled with the finding community, and getting that sense of belonging. I think was super difficult. You know, I joined this like culture organization called Hermanas Unidas at Berkeley, and that like really helped me to find like other people that were like myself, not only people that looked like me, but shared like, you know, cultures and traditions and just reminded me of home. So I think if it wasn't for that, like I don't know what I would have done. I would have definitely probably like dropped out. And while I was there, like really struggling, that was not something that I wanted to communicate to my parents because they're like, "Tú te querías ir," like you wanted to leave. Like that's what I would feel like they would say. Like they would be like, "Oh, I told you so," and I didn't want that. I was too scared to admit that, like maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I shouldn't have gone. Maybe I should have stayed home. And I was stuck in that should have. And so that I would say that that was like probably the most difficult part of being at Berkeley, and like, okay, like how am I going to find my community within this larger community that I don't feel a part of?
Yeah, shout out to Hermanas Unidas HU. Was I gonna tell you? Oh yeah. So did you ever feel the pressure of like going back home on the weekends? Because I know it's like a thing that happens for first gen, at least in the Latinx community. For me, not so far away in San Jose State, but you know, still I can't walk home. You know, so like my parents were like, "Oh, it's birthday of like so and so," or "Hey, we have this going on." I'm like, well, I got other things going on, and it was really hard for me to explain to them. Well, I got like fraternity stuff I have to do, or I'm doing this, and they're like, "What?" So like, even though they weren't pressuring me to go, just the fact that they would tell me and kind of they would want me to be there, I felt this pressure internally that I'm like, I really need to go because of this and this and this. And I would try to find a way, or sometimes put my education on the side at times, and then come back on the weekend, or like on Sunday night, and be doing an all nighter so I can complete whatever I had to complete, just so I can feel like I was pleasing them, even though they weren't forcing me to go at times. Did you ever feel like something like that all the way in Berkeley?
Yeah, I mean, because I was homesick a lot, like I would actually come to Salinas like every other week. I would like jump on the Caltrain, and then my dad would pick me up in Gilroy. And I would like try to spend like the weekends here. And like, you know, I wanted to come home so bad that like I would try not to take classes on Friday so that I can like, you know, have an extra day to spend at home. And, you know, it was hard because I feel like that also was like kind of a struggle in terms of like I didn't spend as much time in Berkeley as I wanted to create that community, because I was like, oh, I'm not finding it here, so let me just go back to Salinas. And so I would come home very often, especially like my first and second year. But now it's like really interesting because I said like I wanted to leave Salinas, and then once I got to college, I was like, I miss my community, I miss Salinas, and like I learned like to really appreciate the community for what it was, and just like how much it like motivated and inspired me to pursue higher ed. And yeah, I was just like very thankful like once I got out of the community. So that's kind of like really interesting how that ended up working out.
Did you said you worked at your high school, so you went back home at some point, like once you graduated. Okay, see, I left and I haven't gone back. I feel bad though, because like I always thought like, you know what, I want to make a difference in my community. Like I want to go in hard now and like do all these things because like it's all messed up, or at least I thought I was. Who knows, right? I don't know how it is now, but I'm here now. No, like I found a community here. I think the students here remind me a lot, in East San Jose remind me a lot of
Yeah.
of my community in Salinas, and you know, so yeah, like I feel like I can still do the work and help my mi gente, even if
Yeah.
Salinas. But one day, you never know, right? I'll never say never, but unfortunately, we all know the struggles that the community in Salinas have, you know, X, Y, and Z, etc. And it's tough. It's tough to try to say to myself, man, I want to go and have family over there. No sé, ¿verdad? It's just
Yeah.
say that, but I'm proud. I'm sure you're proud where we're from. Every time I ever met someone from Salinas, they always say, yeah, it's like, hey, like, you know, 831 and all that. I had a professor here in San Jose State who, the first day of class, Chicana Studies class, he was like, hello, my name is Professor Tavera. And he was like, from Salinas. And I was like, oh, what the heck? I'm the only one excited, and no one was like, whoa.
Yeah, no, I get really excited too. Like I'm teaching a class this quarter at Cal Poly, and I have a couple students that are from Salinas, and I'm always like, hey.
You're like, hey, you know North Small? Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, okay. But that's cool. I mean, like, I'm happy you're doing this work. I'm happy that we're both in the same similar like lane. I think there's a lot of work I mentioned earlier that has to be done for you know for our people, and to try to build them and support them and find them, help them find their goals. Not like and any advice, I know we're getting on time, any advice you want to provide to first generation Latina women, or first generation women who are going to go to college, who are in college, kind of potentially in the same boat as how you were?
Yeah, I would just say like go for it, take risks. I know it seems like really scary. Like it was scary for me to like leave my house when, you know, when I went to like Berkeley or for my master's or when I studied abroad, like all these different opportunities like were definitely scary, but I think I've learned so much from them, from being able to take those risks. And then second is like, you know, also like know that you come with this amazing cultural wealth. Like despite being first gen, like, you know, our families, our communities have taught us so much, and we have like all this strength and wealth of like knowledge and experience. And so use that to your advantage. And don't forget where you come from.
Yes, yes. Don't forget where you come from. That's key right there. I always tell my students, like, when as Latinx folks, when we go to college, we don't go to college ourselves. We have our family
Right.
with us. Like they're going to college with us. They're experiencing it at some point or another with us.
Yeah.
Once we do get to cross that stage or wear that hat, cap, and gown, like we didn't do it for us. We did it
Yeah.
for folks that are over there sitting and looking at us with all that pride. So just
Definitely.
remember, right? Remember why we're doing this, why you're doing it, and it's going to be definitely worth it at the end, no?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Cecilia. It was nice connecting with you, and I hope we can do this again so we can talk about
Definitely.
gender roles at home for Latin families. Like, what can
Yeah.
do to break all these dumb things that we do as that we're taught in the Latino community? But that's
Yeah.
a conversation for the next. Looking forward for that one in the future. But thank you so much for
Yeah,
joining.
definitely. Yeah, it was great chatting with you. Thank you for having me.
Te cuidas. Adios.
Bye.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I saw a couple, you know, like at some point we had 8 views, people live at the same time. This is awesome. Thank you for the support once again. And thank you, Cecilia and T, for joining me in this quick conversation on first generation women in college. So stay safe, people. I'll see you soon. And